Okay, welcome everybody. I'm Jeremy Beck, Numbers USA, and it's my real pleasure to welcome Congressman Paul Gosar of the Ninth District of Arizona here to discuss his great immigration solutions bill, the Fairness for High-Skilled Americans Act, HR 2315, a bill that would end the OPT program, the infamous OPT program. Congressman Gosar, welcome and thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for having us on.
So, for people who don't know you, before you began your career in Congress in 2011, you ran a very successful dentistry practice and, in fact, are in the Arizona Dental Association's Hall of Fame. What led you into politics?
I was always active. I grew up in a family that my mom and dad were both delegates to the National Republican Convention. My dad was a chairman of a local county. So we were always involved. And we were also told that if you saw something wrong, did nothing about it, you were as guilty as the people doing it. So, I had held every position in dentistry. I had volunteered my life. I have turned things around, whether it be our foundation, but no, I got very active with Native Americans on an issue where they were trying to make the first non-doctor doing surgical procedures with high school diploma, 18 months training on individuals who had high heart disease and diabetes, a toxic mix. And so I had about 30% of my patient base used to be Native Americans. And so I told them what was going on and they liked it. So here I am. That's what happens.
That's fantastic. So you started your career in 2011, and we
Mhm.
are, for our audience, we're showing your A plus Numbers USA grade over your career. So over your entire career, you have earned an A plus from Numbers USA, and we want to thank you for being a consistent and reliable champion for immigration moderation, trying to achieve an immigration policy that serves the national interest. Thank you so much for your efforts in that department.
I love doing it. So I appreciate that.
Now, for those who are not familiar with our grades, to earn an A plus from Numbers USA, a member of Congress needs to go beyond just supporting good immigration bills. And there are a lot of good immigration bills out there. But to get an A plus, you need to support great immigration bills, bills that are really fundamentally going to improve the system. And if you go to our website, numbersusa.com, or Eric will put a link in the chat to our 6 great immigration solutions, you can review all of the bills that are currently in Congress that we give the Great Solutions title to. These are the bills that are game changers, that will give us the fundamental, lasting legislative change that we need to achieve a better immigration policy for the American people. And Representative Gosar has not only supported great immigration solutions bills, he has introduced great immigration solutions bills. So he's shown real leadership in bringing these things to the table. And that's what we're here to talk about today, Representative. We're here to talk about HR 2315, the Fairness for High-Skilled Americans Act. It would end the optional practical training program. What would you like us to know about your bill?
Okay, so we first have to understand what OPT is actually all about. And this is not a simple bill. It's a bill that was created by George W. Bush's administration. It did not go for consent through Congress. So basically, all it takes is a stroke of a pen. And what it does is it allows big corporations, particularly like platforms, are very notorious at this, to hire foreign workers that violates the H-1B visa quotas. And it allows they hire usually a lot lower than what an American student will have. And this is our STEM people. This is the science, technology, engineering, and math. And now we're down to less than 28% of Americans who have those degrees are actually serving in those degrees right now. And this is one of those programs. What it basically does, it predisposes these big companies, the platforms, to hire foreign workers at a much reduced rate. And then on top of that, they get a 15.5% deduction. So they're not paying into the Social Security or the Medicare uh, uh, pots
Their
of money.
funds. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just not. And this is totally wrong, totally wrong. And so we've got to destroy this. And we've had conversations with President Trump on this when he was 45. And it's very interesting why we're seeing it grow We've actually seen it grow over the last 4 years, and to a point where now almost everybody is now trying to buy into these bypassing the H-1B visas, and that's not right. Definitely not right.
Thank you. That's just another way to put this is this is when I talk to people about the OPT program, they're not familiar with it. Their jaws just drop. It's hard to believe that there is a government-run program that essentially gives employers discounts for not hiring Americans.
Yeah.
It says we're gonna increase your profits if you don't hire Americans. It's a wild, wild program, and this is coming at a time when computer science graduates and computer engineering graduates are facing higher unemployment rates than art history majors. This is changing our educational system so that when we have international students come and study at the United States, they're not, the universities aren't selling education anymore. They're now selling access to the US labor market, and they're giving US employers incentives, financial incentives to hire foreign workers instead of Americans. You've touched on this a little bit, but could you expand a little bit more on how a program like the OPT impacts your constituents and American students and graduates all over the country?
Yeah. So we should be putting Americans first. And so this program incentivizes, as you said, foreign workers and for these big businesses to hire these foreign workers because they get a break. They actually get a financial break to do this. And so if I'm a student and I am in the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and math, we've told people this is where you want your kids to go. So we've got this program streamlining in our public schools and private schools. And what's happening now you've gone to the employers and said, we're going to skew this a certain way. So if you hire foreign workers, you're going to get a bigger deduction. You're going to profit off this. They'll sometimes go by the guise, oh, we need to keep the very best of the foreigners here. But what about the very best of ours? We won World War I, World War II. We've been an economic powerhouse. Don't tell me we can't have these filled. And so now we're seeing that the true STEM employed American, only 28% of them who have a STEM degree are actually functioning in that STEM degree. That's it. Less than 50%. Yeah, something's wrong here. Something is wrong totally here. So from that standpoint, that's what it does.
There's clearly not a labor shortage. There's not a shortage of talented Americans available for this job, for these jobs, these STEM jobs. And as you say, we've been hearing this for years. Put your kids in STEM, invest in STEM education, send your kids to college. College is not cheap these days. Lots of families are going into debt to put their kids through these programs, and they come out and they're either not finding work at all or they're not finding work in their field of study. Meanwhile, they're facing high unemployment rates. And you have programs like the optional practical training program that are more popular than ever, filling these jobs that are with foreign workers who have graduated from U.S. universities.
Mhm.
It's very, very well said. It affects middle class jobs. We talk about inequality. We talk about economic opportunity. You work hard, you get a good education, you should get a good economic opportunity. These things don't add up. If there's a shortage of labor, why are all these STEM grads not getting work? And why are we have a government program that is paying people less to do these jobs? When you have a labor shortage, law of supply and demand typically says you're going to have to pay a premium on that labor. But that's not what's happening here at all. Your bill absolutely addresses this program. You mentioned another thing that's really important here in the history of this. The OPT program, optional practical training, as we know it today, was created by the executive branch. It was
Yep.
It's never been voted on by Congress. Your bill does something really, really important. It ends the program, but it also makes sure that nothing like it will be created again. It prohibits any future administration from creating something like the OPT program without the consent of Congress. In other words, if you're going to create a government program to give employers incentives to not hire American workers, you're at least going to have to go through Congress and make members of Congress vote for that program. That's
Mhm.
something that didn't happen the first time around. How important is it for the legislative branch to exercise its authority over immigration policy and specifically over just how many foreign workers we give access to the American labor market to.
Well, we're seeing the big result of this with this influx during the Biden administration of over 30 million people. They came in. I would have much rather said, if we need 10 million people, let's go to the people standing in line the right way. But this is totally debunked about what that process is. So I think the process needs to be changed big time. Now, I'll give you an example about how coercive this is. And when Trump was serving out in 45, I went up to the White House. I was the Western Caucus chair at the time. And so he wanted to know what we were doing. And then he says, you don't just work on Western issues. What else are you working on? I said, this OPT program. He goes, oh, really? I don't know. I'm not familiar with this. I explained it to him and he goes, so I can, with my pen, I can sign this away? I said, yes, you can. Well, a young man stands up and goes, Mr. President, you can't do that right now. And President Trump goes, why? He goes, well, you have those 60,000 Chinese, Pakistani, and Indian doctors that we're trying to import into our public health. Think this in through. Your mind will go crazy on this one. I go, excuse me? Wait a minute. We have at least 79,000 American trained doctors who can't practice medicine in the United States because there's no externships or residency programs for them. I know that because I'm in the healthcare fields. And then they got him up and go, we'll have to think about this date. And he was issued run out. So this is something that is hidden from most Americans. And we got to bring it to the forefront. We need to have light on this. And it's important to get this done and get it through Congress, because you're not going to see the executive branch have much ability to do this again. At least we should, at least we believe in the rule of law. And we're going to get back to that as well. But from the standpoint of Congress's jurisdiction, this administration has been trying to follow their executive orders with dictations from Congress upholding that law, making it tougher to get something through. That's why we're doing these tax breaks that the president is really wanting, that big, beautiful bill. That's why we're doing things like all the endangered species, and we're doing this with the wolf and all those different aspects, and mining and energy. We're all trying to codify those with the backing of Congress, because it'll take Congress to do it all over again. Take it down.
That is a great insight. And I know people watching are really interested in your conversations with the executive branch and the president on this. And we're here to help the people who use Numbers USA. They use us so that they can contact their elected officials and tell them what they want, that they support this bill. They support ending programs like the OPT program. And it'd be great to see the executive branch act on this. But you say something that's very important, which is it's to make this a lasting change, it has to go through Congress. Otherwise, we're at the whims of any administration at any point. Congress is what makes this thing lasting. And this program probably never should have been created in the first place. And
Right.
I know there are efforts underway to say that, hey, we need to call a strike here, and say that this thing should be null and void to begin with. But while that is playing out, Congress has a role to play here, a very important role to secure that lasting change. So what are the next steps to make this bill move through Congress and become a law? How can people watching this, how can they help support your bill?
Okay, so the first thing is who are the co-sponsors of this bill? I think it's very important that you know this, because these are the people that are already on our side. So we want to gain more. So let me go through this. Congressman Biggs from Arizona, Tim Burchett from Tennessee, Representative Gill from Texas, Harriet Hagerman, the representative from Wyoming, Representative Miller from Illinois, Representative Moore from Alabama, Randy Ogles from Tennessee, and Roy from Texas. So those are the foundational people. Now we need to get other people to get this through, okay? And so you want chairmen of immigration, you want Homeland Security. Those are people we want to target, okay? And I will do, like they gave me a list here today. So just give you an idea. I will walk around and I have a list of people that may like this other bill I have, okay? And so here's my walking list. So if you see somebody if you put up C-SPAN and you see somebody walking around, that's me. I'm the hound of the house, okay? If you're on my list, I'm going to get you, okay, one way or the other, okay? But this is a list. Here I'm calling, okay? And then we have to have the people back home call them and say, listen, there's a bill, okay? And it's just fairness to workers. And we want you to sign on to that. Once you get all these people, then you're going to get a hearing. Then once you get this hearing, then you're going to have the bill marked up, and that's usually in the subcommittee and in the committee. Once you get that through, it goes to the House floor, and we want a Senate companion. And so you'll see us do that. We've been very good with big bills. Like, for example, we're the only non-U.S. president in U.S. history to ever kill a national emergency. Okay, didn't do me any good. I killed COVID, and that goes back to that story with President Trump. Why were they bringing in 60,000 and Trump didn't know anything about it? Okay, makes you want to think about that. So, but that's how you get something done like that. It's timing. A lot of it sometimes I'll kind of test the waters to see if I'm the person who should really push this bill. If I'm not, I'll find somebody who will be. And that's how you get legislation done.
That's so helpful. There's a lot there I want to follow up on. First of all, co-sponsors. It's a really important step in the process to build support to show other members of Congress that, hey, this thing has momentum. We're going to work together as a group to support this bill. You listed a dozen or so people that are showing true leadership in Congress. It's our job, the people watching this, the people who use Numbers USA's tools. We need to get you more support. We need to get you more co-sponsors on this bill. After hearing what this program does, there really should be a question: why isn't every member of Congress co-sponsoring your bill? This is an outrageous program that displaces American workers and exploits foreign workers. Remember, there's no prevailing wage for these OPT workers. They can completely be exploited. There's really shouldn't be a constituency for this program. And co-sponsors are a great place to start. You mentioned messages and phone calls. We have a lot of people who are great about making phone calls and polite messages to members of Congress. But for a lot of people out there, they've never made a phone call to their representative. They're intimidated by it. They might be concerned that they won't say the right thing or that they might get pushback from the staffer that they speak to. You've been around for a long time in Congress. Can you reassure people who are maybe want to make a phone call to their members of Congress and say, I support Representative Gosar's bill, but they're nervous to do it? How easy and how effective is a phone call?
It is everything. Even meeting them when they're back in their home turf is very important. But if you want to start by calling our office, we'll give you the talking points. Same thing I use right here, and they're very easy. Okay, so if you look at this little pamphlet, this tells you about this other bill we're talking about, the Rail Act. Okay, about looting the rail, what's happening now with, once again, illegals. Okay, taking trains and taking them and stealing the stuff off them. So we'll give you the talking points. We'll be happy to ship this to you. You can take a print of it, and it gives you the talking points that you can just call the office and really start there. But you know what? If I remember right, I put my pants on one leg at a time too. And so I know there's nothing different between congressmen and the constituents. We may have a pin that denotes that we can walk around wherever, but it's really, this country is built on the people. It's with the people, by the people, and for the people. That's all it is. And if we want to keep this republic, we have to have more people involved.
Thank you so much. So for those watching, Eric's going to put some links in the chat for messages, campaigns that you can participate in to contact your members of Congress and urge them to support Representative Gosar's bill, to support the Fairness for High-Skilled Americans Act, and to get them to sign on as co-sponsors. And when they do that, how does that work? Do you reach out to your colleagues in the House and say, hey, you should get on my bill? Do they reach out to you, or is there some place where they just go, a clerk or something like that, where they just say, hey, I want to sign on to this bill, and they sign their name, and then you get a notification later, oh, my colleague down the hall signed on to the bill. I'm so grateful. How does that work?
Well, we're very active with our constituents. And so a lot of times they'll call us and say, hey, I had this conversation with so-and-so. I think they're ready for you to come by again. So I'll hit them up. And so it's easy as choreographing it with us. Then I'll also, we look at somebody's background, and maybe there may be like what's going on in Los Angeles. Maybe somebody wants to really kind of cue in on that one, or in Illinois. It could be just that easy. The violence is taking over. They really want to consider something now. And so we'll do it all the ways in any way you want to do it to make it easier on you, because that should be me doing that job.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and you can always have any member can sign online. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. So you can have this all signed up.
It's an all of the above approach. You doing the outreach, people reaching out to you, and of course, it's our job as citizens to raise our voices and let our elected officials know how we want them to represent us, and we can really help you out and help the American people out by taking those actions, making those phone calls. Always be polite, always be civil.
Yeah.
We're trying to move this thing forward. And but your voice really, really does matter. And you mentioned another way that people can get involved is go visit your member of Congress when they're back in town. Go to the local
Yeah.
office, make an appointment, speak to a staffer. The staffers are extraordinarily helpful and polite. They sometimes they make the wheels go, right?
Yeah, they do. And the fact that you ask a question, when you go to, like, we have business roundtables, we have economic roundtables, energy roundtables, go and just say, listen, we open it up always to the audience and say, okay, what do you know about OPT? Boy, just and a person may say, I don't under, or a member may say, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, it's called, in my district, I wear it out. You have to hear about this, because this is a knock on the federalism, on our rights as Article 1 powers. If you're not going to use them, you're going to lose them. And so the Congress has got to fight for this to get this back, this immigration aspect. It shouldn't be an executive branch. It shouldn't be a judicial branch. It's a legislative branch that has to do this. And our framers understood that very, very well, because they understood the tenacity of which the opposition comes at this. They tug at your heart. But this is tough love. This makes America great again.
You heard it right here, folks, from the Hound of the House himself. Take a page from his book and be civil, be polite, but hound your community, hound your representatives. Tell them that we've got to get this bill passed. Before we let you go, Congressman, we just hit really quickly on some other issues. You mentioned the protests and riots that are going out in LA right now. This was spurred by protests over workplace enforcement, enforcing the laws in the workplace to make sure that legal workers are filling American jobs. Now, this is something that we think is a common sense no-brainer, but it does it reminds us that we just had a record-setting border crisis over the last 4 years, and we have millions of people in the country who shouldn't be in the country at a time filling jobs illegally at a time when many Americans are struggling they're working jobs, maybe multiple jobs, but still having trouble making ends meet. And we know that this is driving down wages and stagnating wages. One of the things that's in front of Congress right now is immigration enforcement funding. That is on the line. That is in the budget bill that you mentioned previously, the one big beautiful bill. How important is immigration funding to enforcing our immigration laws?
Well, if you don't have the money, you're not going to get these people out. And the president has done everything he possibly can, from using an app, the reversing of an app that they allowed people to come into, to some of the bills that we're actually looking at is transparency in funding, like our non-government organizations. One of the things we're looking at is, if you thought USAID was bad, wait till you see these NGOs. What we want is, if you take federal money, even a penny of it, either directly or through a pass-through, we want to see where you get all the rest of your money. It could be China, it could be George Soros, it could be your next door neighbor, but we want to see those. I want to see results too, because I'm one of these people that, if you're going to give me a list of things I've got, you want me to do, first of all, I'm going to ask you, where in the Constitution does it allow me to do it? Number 2 is customer service, customer service, customer service. And 3 is do it a smile, because the other side hates it when you're enjoying what you're doing. But that's how you get America back, one bite at a time, one fistful at a time. And I think this works for everybody. But we have to have this. Look at what's happened. They've secured the border. He has secured the border. We've had over 100,000 illegal immigrants arrested already. But we heard it was 20, 30 million. Plus we had another 30 million in the country before that. So the left knew what they were doing. They wanted to create chaos. They did create chaos. And now you have somebody who's coming to place order in that chaos. That's President Trump. I give him kudos. I'm here to help him.
And to your point, that does take funding. It takes funding to pull that off, to faithfully and credibly enforce immigration laws. We know this is a tough issue to get things through Congress, get budget bills through Congress. We thank you for supporting that immigration enforcement funding. Now it's on to the Senate, and those of you watching, again, check us out at numbersusa.com. We will have actions up there to help support that funding and get through. Is there anything else on your radar, Congressman, outside of the Fairness for High Skilled Americans Act that you see Congress doing this year in the realm of immigration policy that we should be thinking about and looking forward to?
Well, I would be amiss if, we talked about that one beautiful bill. I would be amiss if I didn't say something I thought was very unfair. It really doesn't involve immigration, but this whole package is about immigration. But it's called SALT, state and local taxes. Okay. So we have states like New York and New Jersey and Illinois and California who don't put changes on their taxes. So my average person back in my district makes about $54,000 a year as a family. What the SALT is a deduction for the ultra rich. They take $50,000 per person off of their taxes. Something's wrong with this equation, because my people then are subsidizing that because they're getting a deduction off their taxes. So everybody should be on SALT or nobody should be on SALT. That's number one. Number two is the funding for these national emergencies. Okay. As I said earlier, I'm the only person other than a U.S. president to kill a national emergency. We've got to change this profile, because when I started yakking about this, the Cato Institute followed up. They thought, oh, he's yakking about something. Let's get to the bottom of this. Well, we're 36 trillion, going to be $37 trillion in debt here shortly. Of that, from Bill Clinton to Joe Biden, we spent $13 trillion on national emergencies, and we have no receipts, not one. This has got to stop. What I'm trying to reform this by saying is that president can call one, but so can Congress. But it takes both houses. And I got Joe Biden to actually sign that death warrant on COVID, but it shouldn't be that way. Congress should have the ability to kill it. They have the power of the purse. They should be able to kill it, or a president can do it. And then every 6 months, at least every 6 months, the Secretary of Treasury has to come to Congress and say, here's our receipts. Here's what we paid for. They have to come and say, this is what we spent on, this is what we think it's going to take. And if it goes longer than a year, it's got to be part of our normal process. But think about this. We don't have a single receipt for this $13 trillion. $13 trillion. COVID cost us between $4.8 and $7 trillion itself. Where's the money? Americans gotta wake up, and their questions are just as good as mine.
You bring up the reality that there's a lot of moving parts, especially in these big bills. And for single issue organizations like ours, we have to be mindful of that. You have a job to cover all kinds of issues. And that's why we encourage everybody on this call who's focused on immigration to, bear that in mind, be polite, be courteous, but be sure that you can emphasize the primacy of immigration in your mind and why that is important. Congressman Gosar, thank you so much for your career A+ grade, all the actions that you've taken to earn that with NumbersUSA. You've been a consistent champion for immigration moderation. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, and most especially, thank you for your leadership in introducing the Fairness for High Skilled Americans Act. That is H.R. 2315, sponsored by Representative Paul Gosar of the great 9th District of Arizona, the Hound of the House himself. Thank you all for tuning in, and have a very good day.
Thanks, Jeremy.